and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast 933. This is Todd, of course.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. Oh, we got the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix to talk about. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. You know how we do these.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on.
And that's exactly what we do. And boy, do we have a lot of, controversy to talk about in this. But before doing that, I got to go find somebody who's not always controversial. Sometimes controversial, but not always. That's right.
Ripped from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Harder Racing had a bad weekend.
A little bit of a wicked crash you had there.
Yeah, that's probably the worst week. Well, not the worst. We've had a couple of doozies.
Well, you flipped the car one time.
Yeah, we flipped the car while on our way to try and win Le Mans. That was pretty bad too.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good weekend for the Heart of Racing in Imola. The Italians were not kind to us.
No.
Big crash, and then the Valkyrie was kind of didn't quite. Little problems there, so it wasn't quite up to pace.
Yeah.
Need to fix that. Need the American side to come through.
Yes.
In a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Right the wrongs.
You're going to right the wrongs when it comes back stateside.
Gonna try. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you managed to get the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix watched, and that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, saw that live. I saw it live.
Live. Yes. Well, let's talk about the Saudi Grand Prix.
Let's do that.
Hey, just a podcast note. Now, normally Grace would be back next week, but she's not going to be back next week. Paul's going to be here next week.
Oh.
And we're going to talk about fun F1 news, which Paul loves talking about.
Like engine change rules.
Yeah, engine change rules.
We'll save that for next week. Wait for the fires to go out a little bit, but that's a nice one.
Yeah, right. So we get to talk about some of those for you. But why is Grace not going to be here? Well, she can't be here. You know why? Because she's in Europe.
What? I did podcasts from Europe. I don't know what their problem is. It's like
I know.
She's on holiday enjoying herself or something.
Well, she's over there for the MotoGP race.
Oh, now that's good. She'll bring some good fodder back from that then.
She'll have some great insight from the MotoGP race in Spain.
Fun.
That'll be fun. So that's what she gets out of the office once in a while. So that's good for her. Good for Grace.
It is good. Good for her to get outside in the sun.
Yeah, as my grandmother used to say, get outside and blow the stink off, That's, my grandmother knew me. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in Jeddah. It was the fifth one that we've had there. So this is just the fastest street circuit on the calendar. It's got the most turns, 27 turns of any track on the calendar. And that all adds up to a heck of a lot of high-speed kinks that can be very, very tough to master. So, Paul, you are a professional race car driver, and I've ridden with you, and you've ridden with me, and we were talking about the art of corners. Yeah,
Scarier than Jeddah. Yeah.
Yes. And we were talking about corners, and, typically everybody at home will know this as well, but typically when you're going through corners, you're not looking right in front of the car. You're looking through the corner. You're looking at the apex and through the corner, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing that I noted about this is I watched a lot of onboards of this, and I got to be honest with you, that for me, and I'm not a professional driver, but for me, that is wickedly tough in Saudi because there's walls and there are so many corners, and the corners are really high-speed kinks, and your sight line's constantly moving rapidly from corner to corner, apex to apex. You can't see through the corner because of the walls.
Right.
So you're looking at the wall, you look at the apex, and then all of a sudden you throw in a random slow car in Friday practice or qualifying. And it's like, whoa, and it's got to be nerve-wracking, Paul.
Yeah, the slow car thing is the scariest thing. I think that's the scariest part of Formula One in a year is this track with that kind of difference in speed, because not only even if you can slow down, you may lose control. Luckily, nothing bad happened, but I
Yeah.
definitely looked pretty breathtaking there for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I've driven a lot of street circuits. I love street circuits, but it's definitely a different mindset, and it's also something that the driver needs to work on very hard through the weekend to get that rhythm going. Pardon, beat on Calvin Fisher's word that he uses all the time, but it definitely is a rhythm that beat of a drum. You're playing a song for 3 minutes. You just this leads to this, to this, to this, to this. It takes a while to get to that point, and then you start adding speed and speed and speed, which is why when Senna crashed in Monaco when he had that big lead was because he's changed his cadence, and it threw his whole mindset off, and he ended up crashing at a slower speed than he'd been driving the lap before. I mean, I used to drive. You kind of drive through sight pictures, and you really do drive. Just imagine, a rectangle, and it kind of closes in on you and gets larger as you're driving in and out. And you just use those sight pictures because you don't have the ability to look through the corner, and you try and pick up little things that are a little bit different to differentiate between the corner, to be like key signatures as to what goes next. So hopefully you're not thinking about, oh, there's the SO sign, I turn left here. It's just becoming instinctive and that's the only way to go fast around these type of circuits.
Yeah.
So as I said, it's great fun. I like it. It's a big challenge. It's a very different challenge to a road circuit where you're just challenging the corner. You're really challenging the mind as well at these tracks.
Yeah, I would think so. And because we're talking about such high speed corners here, they're going through these corners at 100 plus miles an hour. And the change is right, left, it's just constant. And so it's wall on the left, wall on the left, there's a boom, then it's wall on the right, wall on the right. And you're trying to look through and all you can see is the apex. You can't really see through the corner.
If you can even see the apex sometimes.
Yeah, even if you can see the apex in some of those corners. So
because at that speed, you have to look so far ahead. You may say, oh, well, they're at the apex, but they never saw it.
Yeah.
They drove a line that takes them to the apex, but they never saw the apex till after they actually turned the wheel.
That's what I was watching, because they're going so fast, and those corners and the apexes come so quick at you that this gets to your rhythm point, that at that point you're just in this rhythm of moving that car and taking the lines that take you to the apexes, and you're through them before you know it, and on to the next one. Because mentally, as a layperson, when you're going kind of quick, you're looking through the corner. You're looking at the exit of the corner, and where you're going to put throttle down, and that all goes away here. And it's you're veterans out there that have been around racing a long time. You know this already, but it still is difficult, no matter how long you've been driving or not.
Absolutely. And then the lack of forgiveness by the walls makes it all the harder. Right.
Yeah. What were they calling it? Like Suzuka with walls, right?
Yeah.
And it really is a tough circuit, and it's tough to pass here because all these corners are high speed. There's 3 DRS zones, but they added some passing to the race for sure, but they weren't a massive impact. It wasn't like we had prolific passing up and down the grid, because just the nature of the circuit itself. It's difficult, but I don't dislike the circuit. I think it's pretty fun to watch, knowing how difficult it is to drive. I think.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's all right. It's not my favorite. Yeah, for sure. And some. Yeah, so who knows?
And I guess they're changing they're moving it somewhere else soon, right?
Yeah, because I think Crofty had said that they were going to widen the pit lane, which would be good because it's pretty tight.
Yeah.
And there's not a steering lock on those cars anyway. They're going to widen the pit lane for next year, but then you're right, Paul. I'd heard that they were talking about changing it.
They're building a whole new track.
Yeah, right.
And they'll move it out of there, but
yeah. Yeah, when money's not an object,
No,
not a factor there. Yeah, right. So let's talk about the race. Let's talk about it. They finished right up top, sharp end of the grid. McLaren, you got Oscar Piastri taking his third win of the season and also taking the Drivers' Championship lead. First time a Australian has led the Drivers' Championship since Mark Webber, who happens to be his manager, as you guys know. So Mark Webber.
Who was the Australian before that?
Hang on. Was it Alan?
I would imagine it's Alan Jones.
Got to be Alan, wouldn't it be?
When last time, I would imagine. In the 80s, early 80s.
Yeah, got to be Alan before Mark.
Where he won the championship.
That's the one that comes to mind, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was a long drought.
Yeah, it was a long drought. Yeah. So, kudos to the Aussies. It's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah, it's great for them, and they got such a great driver in Oscar. Really like this guy, and so he had a really good start. I saw a little a video. I don't know if it was F1's social media or not, but there's a little video showing this launches, and he was like 0.02 of a second quicker than Max off that launch, which obviously made the difference. He got a great start, led into turn one. So as they both went into turn one, he was slightly ahead. Max, left a lot of braked late, came up alongside him as they were going into turn one. Oscar tracked out wide after the apex. Max bailed out of the corner, cut the chicane, and in doing so retained the lead, prompting Oscar to say, on the radio, he needs to give that place back. As it was, the stewards gave a 5-second penalty for Max. That meant Oscar had to deliver a good in and out lap, and he did so. When he made his stop, that worked a treat. That handed Oscar the lead back with effectively Max in second place after Max served that penalty. And in his third win of the season, it was a great job. Oscar said that they've been working really hard on the starts. That was one of the areas that he felt he could really improve, and they've been working really hard on it, and it shows. He got a great start. Yeah. Once he got into clean air, and we know the McLarens tend to like clean air, once he got back out into that clean air, he was pretty much able to sail on to victory at that point. Just a really measured race. And some really kind words from Max after the race. They asked him about Oscar, and he said, I really like him. He's been in 3 years. He's calm. He's cool. I love that he's methodical like that. He doesn't get riled up, and he's got great skill. Max very complimentary of him. So a great win from Oscar. And as we talked in the last podcast and last few, and really in our preseason, this is taking the focus a little off Lando, putting the focus on Oscar now.
Even more?
Even more, yeah. And it was a great race from Oscar.
It was. So I guess we need to talk about this first corner incident.
Yeah, let's talk about it now before we get to Max.
Get rubbish out of the way. All right, so obviously the requirement should be that everyone stays on the track. And we've beat it to death that if you do have to go off track, it should be a detriment to that person's speed or something, damage to the car, etc., etc. You've got to stay on the track. If there was
gravel,
if the white line was a wall, there's no way
Yeah.
Verstappen would have stayed in it, right? Else it would have been a big crash. There's also no doubt that Oscar knew where he was and drove him out there.
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't give Max the right to take the position. Right?
Right.
I don't think, obviously Max bailed out early. I think in that condition at the first corner, you can do that without a penalty, but you have to give the position back because you don't deserve the right to take the position. You're outside. You're a bit behind. You were alongside. He was absolutely alongside, but that doesn't give you the position. And Oscar was able and had the right to, in my opinion, first lap of race, be able to take a little bit of extra room.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a knife in the fight on this. To me, I've seen Max drive people out wide plenty, right?
Right.
And to be honest with you, while everybody was outraged by that, I didn't really necessarily have a major issue with that. I think once you take that corner, he was in the lead. Although, Christian had some printouts, some photos that showed right as they were at the white line there, Max was ahead,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you and I have talked about some of these incidents in the past, whether it
Yeah.
was Max or anyone else. You can let off the brakes and be ahead.
Right, right. You can do that to try and justify that position, but in reality, it wasn't going to happen. You weren't going to make that
Yeah.
corner.
Right.
It's kind of like trying to shoot for that DRS line, right?
Yeah.
You brake 20 meters too late just so you get the DRS, so you can go down the next corner. But ultimately, it's not the proper way to take the corner or what you would normally do.
Right. So Oscar was, this is the issue. I've seen, there's a lot of people arguing back and forth on either side of this, and fair enough. And I get it. It's fun to talk about. But in essence, a lot of people say, well, he didn't leave him a car with Paul. And he was well alongside of him. It wasn't like his front wheels were at Oscar's back wheels. He was well along. Planted there. And he can't just disappear. And he didn't leave a car length or car width, that kind of thing. Yeah. And those are a lot of the arguments back and forth. Yeah,
but in that corner at that moment, in the trajectory both are in, there's no way he could have given him a car width. He's fighting for a position. If he gave him a car width, he'd have had to slow down by 20 miles an hour back there.
Yeah.
He's not going to do that, right? He's going to. So I think all fair and love and war between it. I don't think what Max tried was egregious. I don't think what Oscar did was egregious. I just think because of where you were, when you were, you don't have the right to actually make a pass at that point. You just need to slot in behind him. And that was probably his biggest mistake, was because he might have won the race if he had done that. Yeah.
And, to Max's point, he's probably frustrated because there's been penalties handed out for that.
Yeah.
Right? And I can't disagree with Max on that. Look, if you're both going to go into turn one, in my feeling, I don't have an issue with Oscar running him out wide. No. And I didn't have an issue with Max running people out wide because he was driving for the apex, made the corner, had the position on the inside. He's going to track out wide. And someone coming alongside of him, it's happened with Lewis and people's, I remember the conversation at the British Grand Prix, right? When Lewis tapped Max's back left. And a lot of people were saying, well, that Max is an idiot. If you gutsy enough to try to make it on the outside, that's fair game. And that was, it happens. What I think Max is probably a little frustrated. Okay, so he tracked me out wide and ran me off. I had nowhere to go. He didn't leave me in a room. I've gotten penalties for doing that before. So what's it going to be?
Yeah.
Is that going to be a penalty, or is that not going to be a penalty? Because I'll tell you what, in the next race or two, if Max does that and tracks and runs someone out wide and they run out of space and he gets a penalty for it, he's going to be hopping mad, and I don't know that I can blame him. Yeah. But I'm not being an apologist for Max because I don't have an issue with what Oscar did.
But I mean, I think the type of corner plays into it. If it's a long, sweeping, fast corner, then probably you'd need to give him more room. It's a tight left followed by a tight right, where, as I said, if Oscar was going to make it around with enough room to leave Max, he would have slowed down by about 30 miles an hour. And that's not reasonable, right?
Yeah.
And he's going to take the corner. So, I mean, it's a quick left-right. That's always going to happen.
Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. In my mind, I feel like in the end, Oscar had the better start, had the position going into the apex. Max, let off the brake a little bit, came alongside, tried to make a run of it. The pass wasn't on. Yeah,
the person on the inside always in racing has kind of the edge.
Yeah.
And needs to be, and there was lots of passes going on out there, apart from the Yuki Gasly one, where everyone kind of played properly. You're on the outside, you're hung out there, you're like, okay, this isn't on. You back off and you fight another for the next corner.
Well, Oscar himself made it work. Oscar himself made it work on the outside later.
Yeah.
With Lewis,
different
right?
Corner, but
different corner, but same point.
Yeah,
different corner. It's not a parallel. I'm just saying.
Right. So I got no bones with either of them doing what they did.
No, I don't either.
I just think it was a bad move to think that you were going to fight in the courts. That was a reasonable way to pass somebody. Yeah.
And I'm not knocking Max for trying it. I think the gap was there and he went for it, and unfortunately it didn't work. like you said, there's this nuance. It's the particular corner they're in. It's the first lap. I think the steward said normally they give a 10-second penalty because it was the first lap. They cut it in half and gave it 5.
Yeah. And some of this stuff is, I don't think Max really thought Piastri was going to give him room.
No.
He wasn't running around outside, oh, well, I've got for that split millisecond, I let off the brakes. He knew that wasn't going to happen. But this is all part of being a driver in a championship where it's not going to work this time, but next time Oscar's going to know I'm coming again, and I'm coming again. It's all about building up your racing rivalry with probably someone, obviously someone that's obviously in line to fight for the title against Max.
Yeah. And let's face it, Oscar's not he's not very flappable. I mean, he's a pretty measured, cool character, you know, nor is he going to show, he's not going to give anyone any quarter, and I think that is very much his character, and I think Max knows that. And he complimented that. That's it. What he said he liked about Oscar, after the race. So, no, I'm not digging him. I think both of them had to give it a go. And I don't, Oscar ran him out wide as you would. Max has done it. And if the exact thing happens at the next race and Max runs Oscar out wide, I won't have much of an issue with it either. So down to the stewards. And the stewards didn't see it that way. So the stewards gave a 5-second penalty. So that's what it was. But anyway, let's talk about Lando real quick. A tough weekend for Lando. Had that crash in Q3. Left him starting at 10th. And, then this starts a wave of, mental strength comments and those kind of things. I'm not going to play psychologist Lando. Lando's a professional. He's a hell of a race car driver. Whether he doesn't have a confidence in this car. They asked him about, he's been very vocal, and I don't know how you read this, but he's been very vocal. He's been very kind of terse when people talk about the advantage that the McLarens have. And he said, people kept talking about it. We're not so much faster than everyone else. And he said he's not as comfortable in this year's car. And this year's car for him is not miles ahead of everyone else. And that's a reality for him, right?
Yeah.
Tough week, started on hards, split the strategy, started in 10th, made his way up, made the strategy work. He ended up going all the way up to P4. It was a good strategy. Had a good battle with Hamilton. Maybe it took a little longer than he would have liked, if I'm honest. He said that he's making life difficult for himself, but it is a little bit of a focus shift to Oscar now, right? Which driver's most likely to win? I had Lando recovering this week and taking the win, and my fantasy picks didn't work out for me. He does need to, Paul, bounce back at Miami, the home of his first win. And, I got confidence in Lando will do it. But how did you see his race? Neither of us are psychiatrists on this thing, but I feel like whatever it is, he doesn't have that total confidence in this chassis this year.
Yeah.
Then maybe he had more confidence late last year than he does now. But everybody's ascribing that to his mental situation with the car or whatever. Or maybe, he's got self-doubt or whatever. We all have self-doubt, don't we? We do. But all that being said, I'm not trying to be a grand apologist for Lando. It was a difficult weekend for him, and hopefully he can turn this around.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the race was good. As his strategy worked, he drove hard. He did have a bit of trouble getting around Hamilton, which put him backwards, maybe took him out of,
a podium, possibly.
But the mistake was made, and he needs to turn this around super quick. And I don't think the team are saying, oh, well, now Oscar's 5 points ahead. We're going to fully focus on Oscar. They're not doing that because they don't have to do that.
No,
right. They're nearly at 200 points in the championship already.
Yeah.
Nearly double everybody else. I mean, as I said, their job one is winning that Constructors' Championship.
Absolutely.
And seeing where the drivers are at that point. Other than that, I think they're going to give them equal status, with with the car. And it's tough for a driver to be told, well, you're just driving the best car. I mean, they want to feel like they're earning it out there, and it's their talent that's taken them to the wins. They just want a tool that's capable of winning. And if it does have a little edge, probably does, But, not quite the edge that Hamilton used to have, where they were lapping the field, basically.
No.
It was a two-horse race between teammates.
Yeah, he'd finished the race a minute ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it is tight, and I think it's not a guarantee that McLaren will be the fastest car every weekend, but it's definitely, the strongest pairing and strongest team right now. But Max is kind of mixing it up a little bit there.
He is. And George is keeping him honest, too.
George and Russell, they're close. I think, they're close enough where on a different weekend, there can be a different player at the front.
Yeah, track specific, more likely.
Yeah. So, but as I said, it plays with the psyche of a driver if everyone's saying, well, you're just in a better car, so why aren't you winning?
He's taking, he's gets a little prickly.
Yeah,
when
but he needs to turn it around, because it's been his mistakes that have put him in that position. The team haven't screwed him up.
I think that's something that you and I talked about in preseason, and talked a little bit about last year. I mean, that ultimately is where it does come down to, right? I wouldn't argue that McLaren's got a comprehensive, nothing like what Mercedes had for 6-7 years. They don't have that kind of advantage here. I think on balance, in aggregate, it's slightly quicker than the other cars. But I think, as you said, that could be track limited, right? That advantage can ebb and flow a little depending on the track and how well the Red Bull responds, or the Merc, right? So I think it is Lando and Oscar doing a yeoman's job in that car of extrapolating the performance, whatever small advantage.
And they've been working together for several years on it, and this is what rewards you get.
Right? Yeah, they have. But I do think it does come down to consistency. This has kind of been our commentary around Charles, right? You can't, at this level, going for the title, you just can't have unforced errors.
Right.
You just can't, and that's what Max kind of overcame, right? You just don't see those in Max very rarely now.
Right.
Whereas early in his career, he saw a lot of it, right? So anyway, that's something he's got to work on. I think he's got to bounce back in Miami pretty strong.
Yeah.
And I hope he does. Let's talk about Red Bull, Max. P2 for Max. Yuki, DNF. Max got jumped by 0.02 of a second there by Oscar. They were side by side into turn one. He bailed out of the corner, cut the chicane, retained the lead. Max and the team felt that he was ran off track. They were showing a picture of Max ahead of Oscar into turn. We just talked about that, so belabor the point. Claimed that Oscar drove him wide, didn't leave him room. The steward saw it differently, handed him a 5-second penalty for gaining advantage, and that moved him effectively back into P2 when they did box and serve that penalty. And Max said that the hards weren't great, and that seemed right, as he just didn't really, at the end, even though he got back into 7, he kind of closed in the last 2 or 3 laps, but didn't really seem to have the pace to run down Oscar at that point in the waning laps. So I still think McLaren had a little bit of a faster car here, despite the penalty. Could it possibly have ended up if he didn't have the penalty? It's hard to know. I think Oscar was awful quick in that car.
Yeah.
Max on the hards just didn't seem to have the pace he had on the mediums. I don't know. Hard to know.
Yeah. But if they'd done strategy a little different.
Yeah.
We know Oscar had a little bit of a lazy stop.
Yeah. Yes, he did. Yeah. And the undercut was pretty decent here.
Yeah, and I think it changed their strategy, knowing they were going to get that penalty. But if they didn't have that penalty, I think they would have done something maybe a little different.
I think you're right.
Because I think if they would have got ahead of Oscar, it would have been a whole different story.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, in hindsight, I think about that. Oscar did have a long stop, and they've probably tried strategy different, maybe went for an undercut. That may have worked. Yeah, hard to know. Yuki, tough weekend. Yuki clash. And Max, by the way, Max very short in the interviews, and he's taken a lot of incoming on that.
Yeah. I think it's fine.
I think it's fine. You know what? Here's the thing. He's upset. He's not happy about it. He's not going to go. Everybody's like, "Oh, Mac have a big tantrum." I honestly don't really think Max has a bunch of tantrums. I think he's just very blunt.
Yeah.
He's just very blunt, and he's not happy. And I think his post race was more about making a statement about MBS and the FIA and their whole clamping down and not letting the drive. I think that's what he was doing. I don't think he was happy with the penalty, FIA, and I don't think he's happy about being treated like a child by the FIA with these rules, and he definitely had no time for MBS. And I don't think any of the drivers do. And
they
so
don't.
They don't.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. Not many
Yeah.
people do at this point. So I think Max was making more of a statement about that than he was, quote, throwing a tantrum. I really don't think he's a big tantrum.
No, he's making a statement. I'm fine with it. Actually,
Me too.
I support it, honestly.
I do too.
Most of the questions are stupid anyway. But,
true.
But when you're under that kind of fire, why open yourself up to be under more fire?
Exactly.
Just walk away.
Yeah, and this is the kind of how he rolls. Look, if you're going to clamp down on every damn thing, we're going to say that, you know what?
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to give you. Nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he's not there for the attention. Some drivers are, right? But Max, honestly,
he's not.
He's there because he loves racing.
Yeah.
And that's why he's on the simulator. That's why he's got a GT3 team.
Yeah.
He just likes racing. He wants to go racing, and he doesn't want to deal with all this BS.
Yeah.
And I think that is fine.
And Schumacher was pretty similar to that.
In the end.
In the end, he didn't like all the pomp and circumstance. He had to deal with it.
No. Can you imagine having those same questions? Because all we see is the same questions and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't see it relentlessly for like hours.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's the same question over and over and over. It's tough.
How'd you feel about being ninth? I feel fantastic.
Yeah, right. What do you think you can do today? Yeah, I get it. And I know they're paid millions of dollars to have answers. I get it. But yeah, it's got to wear on you. And not just Max, it's got to wear on all of them.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yuki clashed with Pierre Gasly at turn 1, ended his race. He was able to make it back to the pits, but I think when they looked at the back of the car, they got some rear wing damage and stuff, and they just retired the car. This is not what the team needs as of now. He's had moments over the weekend, the last couple of weekends. I thought, not bad in Friday practice, or even not bad in some of the qualifying Q1, Q2. He's had a few moments that I thought, he's thereabouts, so that's better. But when it comes down to race results, he's not delivering anything that Sergio or Liam wasn't. Right. And at this point, I don't know that there's an answer for this team. What do they do? Throw Isaac at it? I think they're stuck with it.
Well, as I said, it's not a driver problem; it's a team problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think Yuki's doing okay. I think he's doing better than I thought he would do. So.
Yep.
He's competitive enough to not be under threat of someone looking, but
I think so.
You also need to take advantage. He qualified 9th or something.
Yeah.
He needs to try and keep his nose clean so he can actually get those results that you're talking about.
Yeah.
The incident with Gasly was a little different, and I think he picked up a little understeer, but Gasly was way further ahead around the corner, and in his eyesight there, he needed to be he at that point should have been able to react enough to check up so he didn't run in the back of Gasly's rear tire, and he didn't. I'm not saying it was a stupid, idiotic move.
It wasn't blatant.
But when you got this ride, maybe you have to be a bit more careful and not hunt people down and deal with millimeters at that point in the start of the races, especially at this track.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, no, I don't think it was completely ham-fisted or an idiotic move by any stretch. It wasn't blatant, anything like that. Yuki, knows Pierre. He wasn't trying to do that. it happened, got away from him, and it happened. One of those racing deals. Let's talk about Ferrari. Charles Leclerc in P3, Lewis Hamilton P7. Charles made his mediums, Paul, last quite a while. He went all the way to lap 29, and this is kind of the key, I think, for Charles. He went to lap 29. Lewis boxed off his mediums in lap 23. So there's a six lap delta there between them. When he did change for those hards, he the pace really came to him, Paul, because he had a decent tire offset advantage at that point from the cars around him. He was able to scythe his way up to the podium, was able to hold on to the podium when Lando was trying to run him down. He said he was really happy with the race. He said the team maximized everything, executed the strategy perfectly for a positive weekend. He was very positive about this weekend, or at least leaving Jeddah. I think he was pretty happy with the way everything turned out, but it really turned into that offset advantage that he had that allowed him to hold on to that podium.
Yeah, nice job, Charles.
Yes.
Thanks. I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
That's hilarious.
So it was a super job because I didn't understand a word you said, Fred.
It was good. But yeah, he had a great race. He really did.
He did.
And,
he had a great race.
He kept his nose clean.
Yeah.
Didn't make no unforced errors.
Yeah.
Put in the time on the mediums, which no one really knew.
Yeah.
That they just went for it. Well, because why not?
Why not? Yeah.
In that position, you're kind of like, yeah, why not? We give it a go, right?
Yeah.
And going in with that mindset, yeah, it was great. I thought it was a great strategy run and great execution of that strategy by Charles.
Yeah, I do too. It was a great race for him. Lewis, a little tougher. Lewis had some good battles with Antonelli, Norris, Sainz back there, but his strategy is a little bit more straightforward. No real tire offset for him. Like Charles had, boxing pretty much when everybody else did. Didn't have a tire offset. Despite that, even though he didn't have that offset, he was kind of off the pace all weekend. And, he had said out of Bahrain and in the race before that he thought maybe something clicked for him, that he sort of unlocked some performance, but it didn't really show up here this weekend for him. It didn't appear at Jeddah. Fred said that Lewis struggled more in the dirty air, so they really need to work on that a lot more. So he was probably more in the dirty air, certainly, than Charles was. So I think that played a part. Lewis saying, look, he's upset. He's not delivering, and it's not panning out so far for him the way that he had hoped. Obviously, I hope it does. But tougher weekend for him. Yeah,
he's struggling a little bit. What do they say? His biggest struggle is with the brakes or something like that. Which has been a problem before, actually.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think he'll have some highs there for sure. I don't think it's all doom and gloom once again. It's still early. I know we're 4
early
races
days.
now. Yeah, but and all the tracks are so different and weird that you can't really get into a rhythm of attacking the track. Suzuka was one track where I probably thought he would have been really able to make the most of it, but this one I can understand it a little bit. But
got out qualified by Carlos Sainz the last 2 races.
Yeah, that's brutal, right?
That's tough. That's tough to take too.
That's probably the worst of the worst right there.
It's a young man's game, Paul.
Oh yeah.
I hate to say it, but you got Max, George, Oscar, Lando. These guys are the ones running for the title. They're
it's
quick.
Tough to teach an old dog new tricks, right?
It is.
Jumping teams, pretty tough for him.
Yeah, pretty tough. Let's talk about Mercedes. George Russell in P5, Kimi Antonelli P6. George started out well, Paul. Then he really started to struggle with his mediums, and then he boxed for hards. And this is a little odd. He got a band around his front left. His tires, he said, were overheating way too much. He was even worrying whether he was going to make it to the end. And he had a band around the front left. He's kind of thinking that tire might be coming apart. So very difficult for him. You could tell his pace then dropped off. He kind of consolidated and I think, took the measure of it and said, look, I've got a history of going for the podium. It'd be nice to do that, but I don't have a tire for it. And I think he just consolidated it. He did make it to the end, clearly managing his tires, and sunk down to P5, and that's where he finished. So not another podium for George. I don't know. You can knock him if you got a big band around your front left that looks dodgy and, his tires are overheating. I think he just fell into tire conservation at that point and brought it home P5.
Yeah, I think the band came out pretty late in the race. I think the damage is already done at that point. They just weren't quite on the pace.
Yeah.
And which they have been in all the other races. So that's a bit of an adjustment. But as we said, it's going to be track dependent. So maybe they found something on this track that the Mercedes can't, can't make those tires last and can't get the best out of them. And it's hopefully it's just an anomaly for them.
And Toto said
hopefully they get some good data to fix it for the next race.
Yeah, Toto said is the worst race so far for them, and I think that clearly George wasn't on the podium. That's obvious, but I think there were some other things going on with this chassis and this track that just the Mercedes didn't like much. Kimi, on the other hand, I think he had another great race. Had a few battles on track. He a little tougher race than George. He did clip the wall. Still able to go, but he was hanging it out there. That's for sure. He managed his tires. Despite the fronts degrading early on, he felt a lot better, he said, once he got the hards on. Didn't seem to have quite the struggle that George did with his hards, and finished on the tail of George. Despite the finish, the drivers finished exactly where the team wants them, nose to tail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know Toto was a little down in the mouth about their race, but I don't think it was a disaster. I think they did really well.
Yeah, I mean, they did okay. I think Antonelli did really well to be where he was. Obviously, the car wasn't as competitive as Spin, and Antonelli's been pretty fast. But once again, he gets a good finish.
Yeah, and it's a team game, right? And it's all about the Constructors' Championship.
They're second
finishing
in the championship now. Because Antonelli's backing up good runs.
That's exactly right, Paul. And that's why I'm saying it wasn't a disaster for them. Yes, it'd have been better third and fourth, but it wasn't. The car didn't like the circuit. And so in that case, though, they finished fifth and sixth. It's a maximizing the points haul for the team running second. So, they can't be too hard on themselves.
No.
Williams, a great race for them. Carlos Sainz up in P8, Alex Albon in P9. Carlos had a decent start. He didn't get involved in all the clashes up front, kind of kept himself clean out of that, and I thought that was good. Didn't try too hard to keep Lando or Lewis behind him because he pretty much realized his race wasn't with the McLaren and Ferrari. His race, he felt, would be in right there in the middle of the top 10, kind of defending, hopefully holding off what he probably thought would have been the Alpines, RBs, or Haas's. But that's exactly what they did. He used his pace to consolidate points, and he was driving, and I think that's what JV said, James Vowles said. It was impressive because he was measuring his pace within a tenth to keep Alex in that DRS at that speed at this track was not easy to do. So James Vowles, very impressed with what Carlos was able to do. He's a pro. And by keeping Alex in that DRS tow, it allowed Alex to use the DRS to negate Isaac Hadjar's DRS and keep Isaac behind him. So a great job from Carlos.
Yeah, it was a great job by Carlos. I mean, it has been adjustment coming away from Ferrari, but the Williams team looks like the fifth best team.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
It's awesome.
I mean, really the driver lineup is matching the car, which is exactly the right thing to do. You get, you don't get the right driver when you don't have the right car yet. You don't waste those years or that time or that money.
Right.
But it seems their convergence here with competitiveness on the car with the right driver lineup. And on the day, Albon's going to be ahead of Carlos, vice versa. And Carlos is helping Albon. It's kind of like when we talked way back with McLaren when they weren't doing that great. It's like they don't need to worry about beating everybody else. They need to work together to get the best result for the manufacturer, their team, and that's exactly what these guys seem to be building up a relationship to do, and exactly what you would expect James Vowles to direct from the manager's seat.
Yep.
Honestly.
Yeah, and I think James, I watched his video. I mean, I think he was tickled pink. He said, we've got two world-class drivers, great drivers.
Yep.
They both worked together. They both delivered. Carlos executed perfectly to keep Alex out of trouble. Alex said it was a great team game, said that he was quite comfortable managing Hajar behind him because he had the DRS, so he was quite comfortable to do it. The move added another point to their total. It was a great race, and I think James Vowles just tickled pink with the result because it was a great effort by the team. Great effort from the cars. The cars are more competitive. It was a great win all the way around. Great effort by both drivers, consolidating the points, both cars in the points finish. And, just a lot to be excited about that team.
Yeah, and obviously we know a lot about Williams for the history of all their success, but anyone that's been new to Formula One in the past 10 years? Maybe?
Yeah.
They're just a mid to lower back team. So I think they're gaining fan coverage. I think James Vowles helps that because he's a fun guy to listen to.
Yeah, he is.
And obviously Carlos and Albon are pretty good in that respect as well. So I think they're going to gain a lot more fans, and people are going to get a lot more used to the Williams car being more competitive, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about Isaac's race. Racing Bulls, Isaac Hajar P10, Liam Lawson P12. Isaac started on the hards like Lando, made a longer stint work. He was running in P6 early on, stopped for the mediums, and then made the best use of the fresh tires to claw his way all the way back up into the points for P10. Another really good weekend for Isaac, I thought. He said it was pretty tough. He said if the roles were reversed, Racing Bulls would have done the same thing to hold the Williams off if the roles were reversed. So he appreciated that. He said tough to get around, but all in all, I thought Liam seemed to have the measure of Isaac this weekend on balance. But I think Isaac, Liam got a penalty. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think Isaac stuck to the plan, executed well, delivered well, kept a clean race, ended up in the points. Another good weekend for Isaac.
Yeah, no, it is. He's obviously a pretty young guy, a little animated sometimes.
Yeah.
A little bit of a drama around him. Yeah. But doing pretty good job. He's a pretty quick driver.
He is.
I'm appreciating what he's doing in there for sure. I think his debut year is stronger than Yuki's debut year in the same team. So
I agree. I think he's doing a great job over there. And I think he's a great debut.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of expectations, honestly.
Right.
There's so many young drivers from Formula 2 that were jumping up that we'd actually seen drive.
Yep.
And it seemed like Isaac was just stuck with Formula 2 so he could win championship or whatever, but not a lot of expectations. But every week I think he's getting better, stronger and stronger. So
pleasantly surprised. With this, for sure. Liam was on a split strategy, and he looked good until he got that penalty for gaining advantage, leaving the track while he's battling doing. That dropped him down to P12. Liam said that they were in traffic. They were in traffic no matter what they tried, and the penalty was tough. It was, but he did say that he was the most comfortable he's been so far this season over this weekend with the car, and it showed. He actually was ahead of Isaac for a good portion of the weekend. I don't know that I agree with this penalty, Paul. I went back and looked at it. The pass was well done and made before he went through the corner.
Right. And he made a much better attempt at staying on the track.
He did. Yeah, he did. He made a real effort to stay in the track there, and it was just slightly over, and I don't really feel like he gained an advantage. No. So I was really head-scratching with this penalty, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think he must have pissed Derek Warwick off or something. I don't know who's a screw, but he said, didn't he have 2 penalties last time?
Yeah.
It seemed pretty dubious, pretty weird.
Yeah.
So someone's got it in for him in the steward's room.
I know. It's kind of like, hey,
I know
FIA.
all about that.
Yeah, it's like, hey, FIA, take it easy, man. The guy just got moved back to Racing Bulls. You don't need to keep beating him up.
No.
I didn't think this one. I didn't think this one was
either.
on.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. But so I think it's a shame for him because he finished up right behind Isaac on the road, which I think was a really good cleansing race for him.
I did too. I did too.
He can get a week off now.
Yeah.
It's been a been a thing.
Been
right?
tough.
And
Yeah.
get a week off, but come off with that break, but come off a performance like that where you're right there with Isaac. Obviously, Isaac's a new guy, but Liam's not, only a few more races ahead of him. So I think this is good. I think he can come back stronger. Should.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, I agree. I think he looked more comfortable in it. And it was a bit of a cleansing weekend, and kind of the same, really, kind of for Yuki. I thought Yuki looked a little quicker, seeing the pace seemed a little more comfortable, qualified a little better. Kind of felt like that was heading into a cleansing. Unfortunately, had that clash with Pierre, but I felt like both of them can build on that a little bit coming out of this weekend, hopefully. Aston Martin, Fernando, P11, Lance Stroll, P16. Fernando got the jump really at the start, moved up 3 places, had a really good start into the points, but he didn't really have the pace. He just kind of drifted backward from then, couldn't hold that position, slowly dropped to the back and out of the points. He said that it was like driving 50 quali laps trying to get into the points. And at one point, he was up to P11, but unable to do much more than that, really. And then he had that moment where he was, having a fight with another car, and Gabriel Bortoleto didn't see him, right, and moved over. And the old man still has massive quick reflexes. Whoa, and he happens to be Gabriel's manager, so that was really close. But he avoided that. But P11 just out of the points.
I think the car's just a little lackluster, I would say, in performance. It's tough to run 50 qualifying laps when you're fighting for 1 point.
Yeah, it is.
Double world champion. I admire him still putting forth that effort, but I would also be.
I'd understand if he didn't.
He didn't. Yeah, I would. Because once again, everyone's calling for Lance's head. Lance isn't the problem either.
No,
car's not there.
It's not there. Yeah. Well, speaking of, Lance started on hards, ran longer than anyone. But besides having that massive offset strategy, it just could not get up into the points. He ended up down in P16.
Then they're just rolling the dice that there's going to be a virtual safety car.
Safety car. That's what they're banking on.
That's what you got. That's the only thing you left in your pocket to play with.
I think Lance even said they were, really playing for a safety car. It didn't show up and didn't work. I can't be sure. I don't know. I kind of get the impression that, the team's kind of like, okay, guys, do the absolute best with what you've got. We'll bring out a few development, but I kind of feel like all of the focus is in 2026 at this point.
It would make sense. It's just tough to throw away a year, but
it is.
It is. It's diminishing returns at this point with the cars so far along in development. You're not going to find a half second.
No, right.
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 So it's probably correct to do that. It's just very painful to watch.
It's painful to watch. Yeah, it is. Haas F1, Ali Behrman P13, Esteban Ocon P14. Haas just did not seem to have the pace here. Unlike Bahrain, Japan, they've looked pretty competitive. Boy, this track did not flatter. This track just was not friendly.
Not friendly. Not friendly.
Ali's saying that he was struggling on the mediums during his first stint. Seemed to be quicker on the hards. Perhaps that's why they swapped him, but they were both on the same strategy. But I think Aya was just throwing anything at it, to try to get him up there. And Ali seemed better on the hards after his stop. May have been the slightly quicker of the two. They didn't seem to make much gains during their stops for hard tires, and Io said that it was about the best they could do. And that kind of ends their 3-race points rally, unfortunately. But it just didn't seem to have the pace. Esteban really couldn't do much more either with their strategy. And I think the team was trying hard to try to mix something up. Didn't work.
Yeah, all the strategy in the world's not going to help you if your car's not quite there. It's kind of like Mercedes, like Aston. This wasn't their day. And you've got to have a lot of luck in strategy to get a car that's not fast in the points.
Yeah, it seemed markedly off from what it had been, for the last 3 races. So it's unfortunate. Also markedly off, Sauber, you had Nico Hulkenberg P15, Gabriel Bortoleto down in P18. Gabby almost took out his manager as he swerved in front of Alonso as Fernando was fighting with another car. So that was close. but really just did not have the pace. Finished down in P18. Nico ran a long stint for track position, got let past Gabriel, clawed his way to 15th. Jonathan Wheatley said it was just another long, hard weekend for the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can you say about these guys? I mean,
Yeah, not much.
Once again, they definitely should be working on 2026.
Yeah.
They got no chance of getting a
Yeah.
lot out of this season.
Yeah, and not to mention that Mattia Binotto and Jonathan Wheatley just don't look good in green.
Yeah.
It's not their color, man. Yeah, it's not their color. And then finally, Alpine, we mentioned Pierre Gasly. Unfortunately, at DNF, I felt like they were more competitive than that. I feel like Pierre may have been in amongst it, in the top 10, but had that clash with Yuki at the first. The team brought Jack in during the safety car for hards, and then they thought maybe they could try to run him out to the end. Didn't work. No, those hards.
Again, they left him out in old rubber.
I know, left him out again. And I felt like Jack would have done a lot better had they, really kind of upped their strategy game a little bit there. I appreciate they were throwing a Hail Mary there, but poor Jack, I felt like he would have positioned better than that. Had they not just thrown him out on hards after the first lap, said, good luck, see you at the end. Well, that wasn't going to work.
Yeah. Gas is out. We're not going to do any more pit stops. We're all going to the bar. Let us know how that race works out for you.
Yeah, we'll be down at the bar. Have a race with no offset advantage at all. Good luck. Poor Jack.
Yeah, it is poor Jack, I think.
Yeah.
It's because the car's better than that, as Gasly showed.
Yeah.
And Doohan really wasn't that far off in pace,
No, he wasn't.
in practice and quality and all that
He
stuff.
wasn't.
So I think it was kind of a disservice
Do you get the impression?
Do that Hail Mary.
This is all in good, good fun, and I'm poking at the team just in jest, but kind of felt like it was one of those deals where it's like, they're all watching turn one, and Pierre's like, hell with it. All right, let's start packing up. Here, quick, pull Jack in, put some hards. He's good to the end. All right, let's go. Let's start packing up. Kind of felt like once Pierre's out, they were done.
We can get the early flight,
Yeah, we'll get the early flight out. Or Jack, turn the lights off when you're done. Good thing, I feel bad for. I'm joking, of course, but I know the team cared. But anyway, it's a good team, good men and women with that team. But yeah, tough race. All right, well, let's do some awards, shall we? Always do the first awards. Move the race, man. It's a big one. We always like talking about it. It's fun. So, who'd you have for move of the race, Paul?
I got Oscar. Oscar on Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, nice.
Remember that big, long, sweep right-hander who's hanging it out there on the marbles?
Yeah, he was on the
Lewis
marbles.
was not
bad.
making it easy to let people buy him. Nor should he.
Yeah.
But it was very important with that cat and mouse game with Max Verstappen. If he got stuck behind Lewis, he may have been stuck behind him for a bit longer.
Yeah.
And then could give Max an open door. But he didn't.
Right.
He knew he had to get by Lewis, and he did it.
Right. Yeah. It was, and the marbles are really bad at this track, so it was going. My move of the race, I went with Williams. I thought the Williams duo had the move of the race. I thought it was great. Anytime you can use DRS to make DRS look ridiculous, I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
Being 100%. Not a fan of DRS, so I was all for having DRS to make itself look silly. Yeah. I was all for that. So that was
being
good.
Silly.
Yes. All right. Next move, not move of the race. It's donkey of the race. Oh my.
We'll do it live.
Yes, we will.
It's a shitbox.
Yes, it was. Paul, what'd you get? Donkey of the race.
Well, it's a tough one. It wasn't too big a donkeys, But I'm going to give it to Max and Red Bull for not reacting quick enough to be too pushy. And just relinquish that position, and it would have been, I think, a really good fight for them and a lot more bigger chance for them to win the race if they'd have done that.
Yeah, if there was some doubt, they had the safety car. Just swap the position of the safety car. There's no impact.
Yeah.
You're just in second. And then, like you said earlier, Paul, it opens up the whole strategy thing, And there's no 5 second, like you said earlier, they just spent the whole race chasing that 5 second penalty,
Yeah, exactly.
And they wouldn't have had that. So that's, I gave that donkey the race too. I thought, look, if there's some doubt, you know how these things go. Just swap it under the safety car. There's no material loss in time, and then get back on it. Trust that Max will make it happen. You'll have the strategy, and put him in second and let him go.
Yeah, but their strategy is always to be bristly. I get it to some degree, but I think in that case, it just wasn't. You're going to get a 50-50 move. It's not going to go with you, Max, at that point.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Well, the final award is Whoa, Drive the Race. Yes, sir.
Do you like my face? Do you like it?
Yeah, we do. All right, Drive the Race, Paul.
I'm giving it to Charles.
That's who I gave it to.
Yeah, did a lot did the yeoman's job, as you like to call it.
Yeah,
that first stint, and he got the reward for it when he could put the new sticky rubber on and allowed to make hay. So I think he did a great job. Execution, perfect.
Yeah, I do too. I gave it to Charles too. That was a great race. Hey, we do have some mailbag. Let's do some.
You've got mail.
We got a question from Steve. He asked this, Paul. He says, "Hi there. Do you think that in light of Max's indiscretions that the rules need to be rewritten, or does covering the steward's outcome with the line saying leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage, is that enough? I agree that the steward should be wise to Max's tactics now, but there's still a bit of a gray area."
Yeah. Well, I just don't think it's Max.
No, I don't either. I think it's several of them.
I think it's the rules, how they're worded. I think it's how the stewards inconsistently apply the rules.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the tracks that should allow these things to actually give you an advantage.
Yep.
It's all these things. So it's not a Max issue per se. He's always going to push every limit because that's the way he does every lap, in the car and out of the car, and mentally, dealing with the rules, etc. So yeah, I think they need to figure out how to better understand their own rules and how to execute them quickly.
Yeah.
I don't like this. Because they left it up to the teams to relinquish the position, right? Because they don't want to be seen making that decision. They should have made the decision, said, "Sorry, Max, we're going to say this. This is it. Let him go in front of you." I don't like this vagueness where the teams
I don't either.
Like, well, we don't know what they're thinking, so we're going to go with this choice, with door B rather than door A, and they lose. I think if the rules are the rules, and that's the rule they're going to take, then make the damn call
and make it quickly.
Yeah,
I agree.
Exactly.
Just saying, well, it's on the honor system. It's up to the teams if they want to give the place back. No. But if it does go to the stewards later, then it's like, well, okay. Well, this is fun Russian roulette. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Let's just be professionals.
Yeah.
Say gain an advantage quickly and make the call and tell them to give the place back. Done. That's what
blow
Charlie Whiting did.
Yeah. Blow the whistle, call a foul.
Yeah. Call the foul. Yeah. It's not that hard. If you feel it was a foul, call it. And call the team and tell GP to give the place back.
Yeah,
Done.
If you can't make that decision that quick, then either get out of the room or don't call a penalty.
Yeah, or hire more stewards. I don't know. It shouldn't be that difficult. We all watched it in real time, and we could make the call.
Yeah.
Let's not make them mad. And that's part of the frustration I think for Red Bull and Max specifically is okay. All right, fine. All right, listen. But I'll tell you what. If this happens, and they don't call the person, or they call me for the penalty when I was in Oscar's position and ran him out wide, by God, they're going to ram it up the FIA's backside so far they can taste it. And I don't blame them.
Yeah,
I don't blame them. It's the consistency issue.
And
right?
it's an interesting relationship between the teams and the stewardships.
Yeah,
because honestly, the teams are always looking to find the loophole.
Yeah,
I deal it with what I do. Obviously, that's one of the things I do. And you're always trying to find a loophole, and so you're going to the steward saying, well, "What about this?" So they kind of put their back up against the wall also, and then that's why sometimes they go, "You figure it out."
Yeah,
because my back's already up against the wall. So I do understand it from their side too.
Yeah,
and it is a little bit of a battle, and it can be friction. It can even not be friction, but that's how you build the relationship with this. With the different sanctioning bodies and try and get a little leeway when it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Sometimes even a reasonable question goes unanswered because of everything else going on their side.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we think of the race. You let us know what you think. A huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without you. So thank you so much for all of your support. And we mean that from the bottom of our heart. If you like the podcast, go over and give us a good rating on your favorite player. Share it with people. Tell people about it. Spread the word. Get more listeners. That always helps us. That would be much appreciated. And we'll be back next week. Paul and I, we're going to be talking about the F1 news, whatever's current, and we'll cover that. And we'll have a good time doing it. So until next week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.